Today is March 21st, 2025. And why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Evelyn Seeger, but I'm known as Evie. I was always only Evelyn until I met your dad or met Ed, and then all of a sudden I became Evie, and it caught on, and I like it too, so I was fine with it. I am 87 years old, and my birthday is November 7, 1938 is my birth.
Okay, great. So the last time you spoke a lot about your parents and their families and that type of stuff and where you lived, but why don't you now start telling us about your years as a student?
Well, I went to school in Itasca, Illinois, which was approximately 5 miles from where we lived. And so my mom and dad drove me, and when my sister started school, daily to Itasca and picked us up in the afternoon when school was over. And we drove in the car every day.
And what was your school called? And why did they drive you so far away?
Well, because I guess they wanted me to go and my sister to go to parochial school, and this is the church that they attended, and it had a school, and so that was why they made the effort every day to get us back and forth to that school.
And something else that is notable about it is your mom.
Oh, yes. That school was attended by my mom also, when it was probably only a one-room schoolhouse in her day. And in fact, in her day, she rode the train from Medina. My grandpa, her father, shipped his milk daily in the morning to Chicago for processing. And so she would ride with him, which was about maybe a mile, to the train station, and ride the train. She would get on the train and ride the train to Itasca. And so she would get off the train in Itasca, but she was always tardy. But the school knew that she would be tardy, and so she was never reprimanded or anything for it, because that was what was expected. And then at night, she walked, which very common in those days, but she walked all the way home from Itasca, and she would walk through the cornfields and through the fields, so it was a shortcut. And I don't quite know how many miles, but it was a good way. Mm-hmm. And so that's how she got home.
And what was the name of the school and church?
It was St. Luke Lutheran school or church and school. And
did you start? What year did you start? Did they have kindergarten?
No, there was no kindergarten. No.
Okay.
So no, I started out in first grade. Okay. Then the church and the school were not connected. They were not on the same property. So the school grew over the years. And when I started confirmation and had to go to confirmation class, which was part of the curriculum at the school, the class would walk through town, and we would walk to confirmation at the church and then walk back to the school. And of course, we had some fun. Mm-hmm. Too. So we would try to probably find all kinds of different ways of getting back to school after the confirmation class, so we would avoid some of the school.
So how many classrooms then at this?
When I was there, it was, I think, just 2 classrooms.
And how were they divided?
Pardon me?
How were they divided? First through?
Gee, I don't even remember. maybe there were 3 classes. When I got to the upper classes, I think that there were 3. They built an addition on the school, but when I first attended, maybe it was really only 1 classroom at that. I don't remember, but there were 3 classrooms by the time when I got into the upper class.
Okay, so how many you went first through
8th grade.
8th grade.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And what did you call your teachers? Teacher, did you call them
Yeah.
teacher? Like address them as teachers so-and-so?
Well, I think that was kind of more my parents. We would call them Mr.
Okay.
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 I think when I was starting in 1st grade, it was a joint husband and wife who were teaching. And I think that they taught all grades between them. It was very structured, very, very, and then as the school grew, then I had other teachers also, but the but my mom and dad would always call them teacher this, teacher that.
By their last name, teacher.
Yeah.
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 All right, so then where did you go to school in 9th grade?
I went to Arlington Heights High School.
Okay.
I rode the bus for my freshman year at high school, and it was a change for me. And I had a neighbor who she went to a different elementary school, but we knew each other. Our families knew each other. And so she and I rode the bus together. The bus would pick us up and rode the bus to Arlington Heights, which was kind of a drive. It took a while, and then dropped us off again. We probably were one of the farthest. I don't know for sure that, but I think we might have been one of the furthest residents away from the school. From the high school.
Were there any clubs or?
Oh, sure. I belonged to the pep club.
And what did that entail?
Pardon me?
What did that entail?
We had to go to all the games, and we had these little beanies that we would wear. They were red. I remember. I don't even have one anymore, and we were like the pep club, and we would cheer for our team.
Yeah.
And look, my mom and dad did a lot of driving, and I was in the choir, and there were extra rehearsals, but my mom and dad, just kept it up. And then another thing that I'd like to do, Betty, my neighbor that I talked about earlier, she and I every Friday night would go to the roller rink, and my dad would always take us and pick us up, and we had our own skates. And we would just go there and skate, and they had music, and there would be different, almost like you would skate, you had to find a partner to skate for this particular song or something like that. Then they would say you had to skate backward for this particular song. And so it was kind of fun, and Betty and I went every Friday night. My mom and my dad always took us and picked us up. Okay. So they were very giving about us being social, and so it's good. I enjoyed it.
So Sharon, your sister, was how many years younger than you?
I don't know. I was born in 38, and I think she was born in 44 or 45.
Okay. 6 or 7?
Yeah, probably 7 or so.
So, did she want to hang out with you and your friends, or she was just too young
really.
That she kind of had her own?
Yeah, she had her own thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can remember, it was like the end of the war, and for her, I can just remember this, for her formula for milk, I think in those days you would use corn syrup I don't know, maybe with regular milk, because we had cows. So, and I think they would probably put corn syrup, and I can remember that there were stamps, and that's how you could buy your sugar, some of your basics that you needed, and you would get them from the government. And I can remember some of my aunts collecting some of their stamps so that my mom could um, put some additive in my sister's milk for her bottles.
Okay.
So
Okay, that's interesting. So, how many years did you go to Arlington Heights?
I went to Arlington Heights for 3.5 years. And what happened was my dad's farm was bought uh, by the neighboring. It was abutted right next door. Uh, the property line was to a forest preserve, and I don't know what happened, if a bond issue went through or how this all came about at that day. But the forest preserve was expanding, and they were buying all the neighboring farms. And I can remember my dad saying, I'm not getting the best money, but I have to take what they're going to give me because they will condemn it. He called it condemn it. And then he said, I will probably get less. So at that time, my grandpa lived with us. He was a widower, and he traveled every day to take care of his farm and spent the nights and had dinner and breakfast with my family, and then he would go to his farm and he would do his farm. Well, it was getting difficult for him, and so when it came time for us to move, he suggested or offered it to my mom and dad if my dad would take over the farm. And he still owned it, but my dad leased it from him. And my mom and dad built a new home on the farm because it had an old farmhouse, and they built a new home on the farm. And we moved there in the middle of my junior year of high school. And it really didn't bother me that much because my best friend, Burnett, who I knew from the time we were in second grade at St. Luke's, she already had moved to a neighboring town, and I knew right away that I had a friend, and fortunately she had a group of friends, so I was just included into their group. So it wasn't that much of a trauma for me.
So, in the name of the new high school.
Pardon me. Then I went to Glenbard High School, which was in Glen Ellen, which was a long ways. The community or school district, there were, which was basically Itasca. Itasca kids could decide if they wanted to go to Bensonville High School or they wanted to go to Glenbard, which was in Glen Ellen. And of course, there was never any question about where I would go. And so I would ride the bus also. And I think my dad had to take me someplace to meet a bus because, I mean, we were out in the country and probably to one of the main highways or something. I don't remember that for sure, but I had to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then also, when I must have been 16, I had to be. By the way, I got my license before we moved so I could drive, but I think I was encouraged and I decided I wanted to do that, and I got a job. And I got a job at Medina Country Club, which is well known because they've had some very famous golf tournaments there. And it was just maybe about a mile away. And so I worked in the accounting department, and they had a little bus. They would come and pick me up and took me to it was a gated, it's a Masonic country club. And so it was gated, and only members were allowed to be in. And I worked in the accounting department. And as one of the bennies of it, we would get free lunch because they had naturally dining rooms, many dining rooms in the the clubhouse. And so we would be treated to our lunch, and we would go. I think we had a special dining room for employees, and so we could go there and have our meal, and then they would take me home at night. And I worked there, I think, I don't know, but just probably in the summertime, because in the wintertime, the golf course and all the amenities probably, circled down, and so that then they didn't need me anymore.
And you would
It was
have
a
been,
summer job.
but it was when you were in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? So you would have been going to school too.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay. So you graduated from Glenbard?
Glenbard, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what? Then what happened?
Well, the shorthand teacher said to me, will you be working, or something like that, she asked me. And I said, yes, I would be looking for a job. She says, well, I have the name of someone, and I'm going to refer you to that person, and they would like to interview you, which was wonderful. And it was someone in Glen Ellen. Come to find out, my dad took me over to this person's house, and I spoke with him, and they hired me, and it was in Chicago. But the funny part of it was, my dad had already made arrangements that I was going to work at the bank in Itasca. He has connections there, and he already had spoken up and asked if there would be an opening for me at the bank, and I didn't want to do it. I thought it was pretty exciting to ride the train and go to Chicago, and so I did. So I took that job. So I took a car. By that time, I think I had my own car. I had a car. I'm sure I didn't own it, but it was a family car. And so I would drive to this depot, and there was a depot right in Medina, which was the closest one, and I would park my car and drive the train. And fortunately, Vernette also had a job downtown, and I think more girls, more of this group that were Vernette's friends. I think there were probably 4 or 5 of us who rode the train. Now, we didn't always ride the same scheduled train, but Vernette and I for sure were on the same train. And so we would ride the train in the morning together. She would get on in Roselle, and I would get on in Medina or Itasca, and we would get off at our regular stops.
So before you worked every weekday in downtown Chicago, how many times would you go with your family?
Downtown?
Yeah.
Oh, once in a while at Christmas, because it was a big treat to go downtown Chicago to see the windows at Marshall Fields and to see some of the other lights in the city. And so I remember we took the train, I think. And then also another thing that we would do once in a while when I was a child, we would see the Ice Capades in Sonia Henney. And it was a big deal for us to drive down. It wasn't all that the Coliseum or whatever it was that had the ice shows, and I think later on basketball and basketball also, but it was mostly ice shows, and probably circus would come and stuff, but we would go to see the ice show. That was a wonderful thing that my mom and dad loved, and we would drive there. My dad would drive us.
Okay. So going back to your friend Vernette,
Uh-huh.
why don't you tell us her full name before she got married and after she got married? And
Oh, her full name was Vernette Flenchy, and they were never. They were she and her mom and two sisters were neighbors when we lived on the farm in Elk Grove. Um, her mom and her dad divorced, and her mom, there was a bachelor farmer, and he needed a housekeeper and somebody to cook for him. And so she took on that job, and she and the three girls could live in the home, and probably for nothing or something like that. And so she wanted the kids to go to school at St. Luke's. So she asked my mom and dad if they would, was on the way, if they would pick up her children also, which my mom and dad said yes. And she always wanted to pay my mom and dad, and my mom and dad would say no, 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 you know. So that's how Vernette and I became friends. We were in the same grade. And she had an older sister and a younger sister. And so that's how I've known her for life. And we still talk to this day.
I was gonna say, and she's still your friend.
Oh, yeah, we talk, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about getting old and all our health issues. And then I am the godmother of one of her kids, of Dean, and so we've always stayed close. We were in each other's weddings. It was just, we have remained close to this day.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So how long did you work in Chicago then?
I worked in Chicago till Lori was born.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I worked till
after getting married, and
yeah, oh, for sure, yeah.
And what was your job title?
I was an administrative aide to. It was a food broker company, and they worked with vendors to the grocery store, and they brokered food. And so, I was an assistant. There were food. I'm not sure. Don't remember how many brokers there were in that office. Maybe 4, and representing different categories. And I think the one I represented, or the broker that I worked for, was canned vegetables or something like that, canned goods. Mm-hmm. I think vegetables and fruit. And so some of the other brokers were assigned or worked with vendors for produce, et cetera, different categories of food.
Okay. So you graduated in 1956?
Maybe.
Okay. And then you got married in what year?
Mm-hmm.
1957.
Probably, yeah. And
sure.
then I worked till Lori was born.
Yeah. So how did you meet Dad?
This was when we still lived in Elk Grove, and Betty and I, for some reason, I don't know how this all started, but in those days there would be ice skating rinks, ice outside in some low areas of these farms. And on this one particular corner, not too far from my mom and dad's house, there were cattails around the edges, and it was pretty rough. And so I don't know how I got there first, how I knew about it or what, but anyway, there were neighborhood kids that I didn't even know, and they would be out there ice skating, and it was just a fun thing. And so, I don't know, pretty soon Betty and I were going out there to ice skate with these other people, young people. And some of them, they were older. We were probably the youngest ones.
Mm-hmm. What was Betty's name, just so we...
Betty Haas.
Haas, okay.
Yeah.
But go ahead. So you and Betty were...
And she lived in the farm next door to my mom and dad's farm. So that was her parents' farm. So my dad, again, was take us and pick us up. He was just very, very kind that way. And so anyway, so that's where I met your dad. and he loved to ice skate, and you know that. Ice skating was a great thing for him, and I think he was out of the service when I first met him.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he had been in the service. He had been drafted, and he was in Korea. And I think he just had come back, and so he had a bunch of friends, and they were all down there, And like I said, Betty and I were probably the youngest of them all because they were maybe a couple other were about our age that I met that were lived in his neighborhood, which was right there too. So. They weren't farmers. They were just, it was a residential area. And and your dad, Ed, um, I think what attracted to him is because he was so much fun. And he loved to play crack the whip. I don't know if you know what that is. And he would always make sure that I was on the end, and I was not that good of a skater. And so he just laughed and laughed and laughed, had more fun with it. And and so anyway, I could just, I just I just liked him because he was so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Did you go on dates, or how did that in the
No, I
late
think
50s?
not right away, but I think it wasn't till. No, I was still in high school when we did go out. In fact, we went to a prom together. Burnett and Wayne, her husband at that, her boyfriend, which is now her husband, and Ed and I went to the prom together, and then we went out to eat, I think, or something. In fact, I have pictures probably someplace that were taken when we went to the prom together. So yeah, I think I did date him,
Mm-hmm.
when I was still in high school.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then he proposed.
Yeah, it must have been after I graduated for sure.
Right.
That and he did ask my dad, and of course they said yes. Not that, but and then I also, that was first when we lived in Elk Grove yet, and then we moved when I was still dating him when we moved to Medina, to the new area, to the new home.
Okay.
So
all right, and your anniversary?
September 28th.
28th, 1957.
I think so.
Yeah. What was your wedding like?
Wedding? Big. But this is my dad had, and my mom too, come from big families, and so it was just like these weddings were that big. There were people there that I knew, but maybe not that well. It was my mom and dad's party, I think a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, the bride would throw a bouquet, and the groom. Well, those people that caught my bride, the gal who caught my bouquet, was a wedding crasher. I didn't know her, and I've got somewhere. I think I have pictures. So we had pictures of she and I standing together, and she's holding my bouquet. I didn't know her, and I had to ask around who they were late after the fact. So maybe these, and they were relatives of relatives, So
all right, and so the actual marriage, the wedding, took place
in Lutheran Church in St. Luke. Yeah.
Okay, and then just around the corner at the reception.
No, it was in the next town. There was a fire station, and they rented that fire station to, like every wedding I know of, hardly every wedding was at that fire station. They would pull the trucks out. You could dance on the floor, and you know it. Yeah, dance on the floor, and they had a bar in another room, and they had they had a kitchen in there, so you could have a caterer, and my mom and dad had it catered, and I mean, every wedding was there. And then after the wedding, they'd clean up and move the trucks back into the fire station. And I bet you I don't know, it didn't happen during our wedding, but I bet you there were times when the fire had to go out, fire truck had to go out. So, but it didn't happen. And no time that I was there either. But yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
All right. Well, I think we'll stop for today.
I talk enough, don't I?